Now, Israel's military has insisted that no fighting has taken place within Gaza's largest hospital. The IDF announced it was carrying out a precise and targeted operation at the Al-Shifa facility, where it claims to have found Hamas weapons and terror structure. Hamas infrastructure, rather. Hamas has released footage claiming to show damage inside the hospital. We can talk now to Mark Regev, senior advisor to the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. Good evening. Thank you very much indeed for being with us. And I don't have to tell you that armed troops entering hospitals in a war zone is problematic under international humanitarian law, unless that building and the people in it are a significant military threat to your forces. Can you prove that that is the case?
I can indeed. And we don't take it all lightly, the fact that we've had to send forces into hospital. But as you know, we've been saying for quite some time that Hamas has turned the hospital into a military site. They've established underneath the hospital their command and control. And as you also know, the last few days in Washington, the White House and the Pentagon confirmed Israel's view. They said they have their own information that attests to the fact that Hamas has deliberately placed its military machine underneath the hospital, using the hospital as a cover, as a shield,
right,
for its war machine. And if you talk about international humanitarian law, you know that this is a grave crime. To use a humanitarian site like a hospital as a shield for your war machine, that's against all the rules of armed conflict, that's against international humanitarian law, and Hamas has to be condemned for turning a hospital into a war zone.
Yeah. Now, I'm reading that the Israeli military says it has found technological assets, extensive intelligence information, some weaponry, some ammunition, some flak jackets. Is this proof of what was called a major Hamas command and control centre? And will this proof be provided, this evidence be provided?
I think as our forces move forward, and as this operation becomes, because it's still ongoing, of course, at the moment, as we succeed in this operation, I have no doubt that we'll be inviting in journalists with cameras, possibly also from Sky, to look at what we have in this hospital. But can I say something that I think needs to be said? It's not just the Israeli government and the American government that attests to the fact that Hamas has turned this hospital into a war zone. But the people of Gaza City know this. The people who work in the hospital know this. They can't say so, obviously, because they live in an authoritarian regime and you can't speak out against the Hamas rulers without facing their brutal reprisals. But this is not a secret, or if it's a secret, it's the worst kept secret in Gaza. Everyone knows about these Hamas military installations under the hospital.
Everybody knows, too, that there are civilians in that hospital, there are seriously injured people in that hospital, there are premature babies who have had to come out of incubators in that hospital. I just wonder, now that you control much of northern Gaza at least, where is the significant humanitarian aid, the food, the fuel, the water, the medicine, that you can now get into an area that you effectively control?
So, first of all, the overwhelming majority of civilians have left the northern Gaza Strip. If the population before the outbreak of hostilities was about 1.2 million, my understanding is that more than 1 million people have already voted with their feet and accepted the urgings of the Israeli military and have moved out of the combat zone and have moved south of the Gaza River, out of the firing line. And this was our request, because we didn't want to see civilians caught up in the crossfire between Israel and the Hamas terrorists.
Right. Now, but that leaves 200, maybe 300,000 people there. We know there are some in the hospital. You've always said, you've always said that, look, it's up to Hamas to run things in Gaza. They run things in Gaza. It now seems that you are dismantling Hamas. So you are effectively in control now. You are responsible for these people, these innocent people. When will Israel provide a proper humanitarian relief effort for those people?
So I'd like to tell you it's over and that we've destroyed Hamas, but we're not quite there yet. We might be there soon, I hope. But at the moment, we've already brought into the hospital incubators and petrol, fuel for the generators in the hospital. We've brought in other medical equipment. We're also facilitating, because there is ongoing fighting in the area around the hospital, we've established an exit road for people who want to flee. We obviously understand not everyone can flee, but because actually it's interesting. In the last few days, we've seen like 50,000 people leave, 70,000 people leave. And why is it that you've had these people now leaving at the last minute? And it's as you say, as Hamas's rule becomes less certain, people who were held back because Hamas didn't allow them to leave maybe can now finally leave. That's a good thing.
But my point remains, and we've only got a minute left, but my point remains that there are these premature babies, there are sick children, sick elderly people who cannot move. There are claims that some people who tried to move have been shot at. I don't know the truth of that report. But my big point really is, isn't it time now for a substantial Israeli humanitarian effort in northern Gaza at least?
So I think we can help facilitate that when the time is right, when the fighting is over. It's difficult to do it while combat operations are still happening. But I think what we need to say, the pictures out of the hospital, and I agree with you there, to see the pictures of the babies, you can't be a human being and not be moved. But it does remind me of something that both of us are old enough to remember. The late 1990s, Iraq, Saddam Hussein used to take journalists into hospitals and to show the little Iraqi children suffering. They weren't allowed to get the medicine. And they used to say that President Bill Clinton and Madeleine Albright, the Secretary of State at the time, they were deliberately murdering Iraqi children. And the way Hamas has had the cameras in the hospitals, it does remind me of this, because the humanitarian crisis in the hospitals, it was caused by Hamas.
Well, to be fair, I mean, you are dismantling Hamas, certainly in northern Gaza, or so you claim. So, I mean, and there are still these innocent people there. But look, I appreciate you coming on the programme. Thank you very much indeed for being with us again. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Right, we have some sport now with Julian.